Good morning, everybody. I would like to talk about the smart factory with you. And the key big question, why is it not already there? I mean, we all want to have the smart factory, but most factories I visit may produce data and maybe you do things on the data, but really smart? Sometimes. The project we saw before, yeah, they are smart. And we would like to bring them more to the shop floor. And I'd like to ask the question, why are other industries ahead? If we go to a 10K foot view, we can categorize data analytics broadly into 3 categories. There's financial services analytics. And I don't know, they do data forever. It's all data there. We have data on customers, and we do analytics on customers. And if you go to Google, or any web shop is using Google Analytics to use data to make better offerings, there's a lot of analytics there. And then you got manufacturing data, or manufacturing companies. And I know this is a super broad view, because I know process manufacturing is totally different from cars, and sure. But what I would like to talk about is the reasons why the other 2 industries are a bit more ahead. And then about what we can do to tackle those reasons. So you know what that is? It's a bond. It's a bond from 1648 from some dike company in the Netherlands. So they wanted to build a dike, a dam, to prevent flooding in the Netherlands, and they needed money. So they went out and they got some 5,000 guldens or whatever it was, and there's still interest paid on this. It's written on goat skin, and this goat skin is now in Harvard. And actually, Harvard is paying the interest on this bond. And it's noted on the goat skin what's been paid for round about 400 years. Why am I telling you that? So one big challenge, one big reason for that is data availability. Financial services, insurances, and banks, by nature, have tons and tons of data. Sometimes from 1648, usually not. But still, they got tons of data already there. Custom analytics, I would argue, Google, Facebook, they got so big because they solved that. They have built a system to capture exactly this kind of data and make money off it. And then you got manufacturing, where sometimes there's no data. Because sometimes the machines are older than I am, and they are still working, and they are still working well, and you need to retrofit them. It's way harder also to capture all the kind of data. And that's why it's way harder to do analytics. So data availability is one of them. The other part is data homogeneity. What do I mean by that? Go to a bank. They have loans, and it's always the same kind of data. And it's usually tabular data. Custom analytics, well, take a Facebook profile. The trick is it's always the same kind of data which you're working on. And then you go to a shop floor, and you got sensor data, audio data, image data. You may have copies which are Xerox 20 years ago from something where you have an image of. Or you may have video data like we saw before. There's way more different data. And guess what? If I go to one steel furnace and to another steel furnace, it's still a steel furnace and the chemistry is the same. But the kind of data you record or how you record it is vastly different, which makes it way harder. So the data is not always available, and it's way more different and harder to interpret by people. not just the data is problematic, but also the problems are. I think there's no banker here, but what banks are doing is risk, 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 and a bit of fraud, which you may call risk. It's always the same problem. And guess what? If I go and solve this use case for HSBC, I can turn around and go to Barclays and sell them the same thing. You can verticalize solutions. And customer analytics, again, Google. And so what are they doing? They find subgroups of people which are of interest for you, whatever the interest is. Targeting. It's always the same thing, which you can verticalize a lot. Manufacturing. We may call the problem predictive maintenance. But what's the maintenance? If I do maintenance on a train and on an airplane, vastly different problems. What causes the maintenance is the question, and you want to predict the cause for the maintenance to do the maintenance ahead of time. Let's not even talk about all those quality control use cases where every little company has their own challenges which are very, very different. So what else makes makes it easier in customer analytics or financial services to do that? Well, ideally, you do not want to kill the slides. You want to have a low number of high-value use cases. Because then it's worth to get the biggest experts on the field, the rare people, we heard about it, there are not that many people in the UK there, and get them to solve that. If I have one use case, which is worth $1 billion, I can focus a lot on that. The smaller the company gets, or just by the number of use cases, the smaller gets the value on a use case. And we may still talk about $1 million or something, but still, we're already on the next slide. Manufacturing has a harder time there. Because if you go into an organization and do what we call a value mapping and an AI assessment and check, you find dozens of use cases. And usually they are not in the billions. Okay, so these were more technical reasons, and now I want to move more into organizational reasons. Peer pressure or innovativeness is a thing. So far, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of peer pressure in manufacturing. But as far as I understood it, the main answer to that so far was do better engineering. It's a valid strategy. If you are not forced to innovate, hard to do it. Google forced everybody out of the market, essentially. So the more competition you have, the more you get results. And I think we are right now in a state where there's tons and tons of competition around data in manufacturing in the smart factory. And because we have it, there will be a lot of change, and there will be a lot of data analytics on manufacturing data. What is one of the reasons? Compliance is a funny one. Compliance first forced banks to do something around anti-money laundering or other risk thing. There are always these stress tests being run. But at some point, it may hinder innovation. Because I was at a bank and they said, listen, Martin, why should we do more? We fulfill the regulations, so we're good, right? Why should we use the latest AI, ML thing if a rule-based system cuts it? So compliance goes in two directions. You may argue that a lot of privacy algorithms, so algorithms which work privately preserving and explainable AI, were caused by more regulation coming into customer analytics. So compliance, on the one hand, can force innovation, on the one hand can hinder innovation. Actually, compliance is one thing where manufacturing might be in an interesting situation, because if I see data recorded, it's often around compliance. You have a lot of data around quality control because you need to prove that your thing which you create is not causing any issue, insurance-wise, and so on. And there is already quite some data. And a lot of analytics already being done in manufacturing is around compliance. So that's more a positive one. Okay. Let's come to the last one. You maybe hear I'm German, and I drove from Dortmund, from our headquarters, to Berlin. It's a great German Autobahn. You drive 400 kilometers straight. In Hanover, it suddenly said, Martin, go off the Autobahn. All I knew was I go on the A2 and I drive 400 kilometers straight. Who of this group would trust Google and go off the Autobahn? Most of us. I did. I trusted the system. I trusted this AI system that it's smarter than I am, or at least that it knew that there was congestion or something to do it. But I'm no expert on that topic. What if we talk about something I'm surely the best expert on? That's the German football team of 2014, when we were good in football. That's a while ago. And I'm sure in the UK it's the same thing, or in England it's the same thing. Everybody thinks they are the biggest expert on football, and they know which team to field and how to win the World Cup. If an AI system would predict what England or Germany should field, would you trust it? By the way, when I posted this image and that I'm using it in an English conference and asked, like, can I do that? The answer from a colleague was, oh, that's the 2014 team against Algeria, right? And I was like, how do you know that? Well, it was Porto Alegre. You see that up there. Porto Alegre couldn't be the final because that was somewhere else. And against Brazil, we fielded a different team, so it needed to be the quarterfinals against Algeria. I didn't even remember that we were playing against Algeria. So apparently, I'm not a big expert on football. But it brings me back to the point of trust. If you do not trust the system, you won't use it. Guess what? The engineers we are talking to who are supposed to use the system, or the operators who should use the AI-based system, they are the biggest experts. They designed the system. They operated the machine for 30 years. I was standing in the control room of a blast furnace and asked, how do you run this? And the answer was, we do this for 30 years. We know what we're doing. And now go there with an AI-based system. It's a tough sell. So back to my story of customer analytics. Well, you basically created a whole industry from scratch, which was data-driven. You may challenge me on, but if I go to a grocery store, there's not that much data analytics yet, right? True. Yeah. And one of the reasons is there was a new industry being created, and, well, people trusted the system because it was the system which was there. It's an interesting one for financial services. I think the current generation just is used that the computer is saying the risk level and how much interest a person should pay on a loan, and so on. But trust is an important point which we need to talk about. Summing this up, I think I made my point clear why I think financial services and customer analytics are a bit ahead of us. In many dimensions, one can argue that those industries have an easier time. But just because it's hard, it does not mean we don't do it. It's possible to do it, and it's valuable to do it, so let's do it. Okay, let's talk about solutions. I can't go on stage and say, team, that's the problem, what do we do? And I want to make a big point around how you can do analytics. There are, in principle, 3 ways if you want to do analytics in your company. Number 1, you hire a bunch of developers, Python-based, put them into a room, and they do the analytics. Okay, you can do that. On the right-hand side, you can hire a company. There will be plenty of companies who would love to do that. They come in and they build analytics for you. Or number 3, in the center, democratization. That you upskill your existing team to be at least part or driving factor of analytics in your organization. And I want to make the point that democratization plays a key role, if not the leading role, in this democratization, in this process of becoming a data-driven company. Why? Well, let me make my points. The trust part. Well, if you were part of building the system, and if you understood how data analytics work, you may trust the system way more than a black box which is put in front of you. Okay, so democratization helps. Data homogeneity. Well, the problem with data homogeneity is that the data needs to be interpreted. The more complex the data is, the harder it is to make sense of it, the harder it is to work with it. If you go the professional service route or the team of developers route, you need to explain them what this data even means. What is this number there? If you go the democratization route, they can handle the variety of data way better because they are used to it. Problem homogeneity. Well, the thing is that one of the hard tasks for me is if Bal says, hey, can you go to this company and scout use cases, what I need to do is understand the company first, or their production process. And usually it's working with whom? With the subject matter experts. To understand what kind of problems do they have and how to match that to data analytics problems. Then, low number of high-value use cases. Well, first of all, you've got many SMEs who can tackle more use cases. That's helpful. And identifying the high-value ones is easier for you to understand the problem. So my point is, democratization needs to be a key part of this initiative. And we had that in the previous talk. Guess what? There aren't enough Python-based data scientists. You cannot just hire 20 of them. So surprise, maybe that even forces parts to go democratized. Another advantage of democratization. I still want to make the point that if you do not democratize, if you choose, I go the developers route, which you can do, there will still be democratization. People will download some software from somewhere or find budget to buy a bit of software, hopefully from us, that would be good, and do things. You may call that anarchy. Not sure if it's really anarchy. I wouldn't call it like that. But the point is, better have an organized way of going into democratization than do nothing and people just do it on themselves. Because, surprise, if you just throw software over the fence and say, good luck, it won't work. We tried it, actually, sometimes. Not on purpose, to be fair. But this idea of, I have a great software and I give it into your hands and you will do magic with it, does not work in an environment like data analytics, which is just hard. It's not that simple that you can just give Word into the hands of somebody and they can write a thesis with it. So just taking software is not enough. And this is where the second part of Altair comes into play, and Bal alluded to that. A RapidMiner or Altair RapidMiner is a great software, which we offer. And we allow, with this software, that more people do analytics. That subject matter experts can do analytics. That's the first point. But also Bal alluded to it. You need to upskill your team. There's this academy which allows you to learn, which is a key point. And then lastly, I could have done a whole talk about this COE methodology around how do I find use cases? How am I able to figure out how hard the use case is and how valuable a use case is? There's a chicken-egg problem going on. The person who knows the problem doesn't know the solution, and the person knowing solution doesn't know the problem. So you need to meet somewhere and upskill one another, so to say. We got a whole methodology in place to do that, to go on the democratization route and help your company to become democratized and become data-driven. And that's it for me. I think I'm already over my time, right?
Data's just that line.
What can I say to the data? But I hope I make my point, and I hope we can talk in the coffee break.